Hello, my name is Cyclone Oz, and today we're going to be tracking the remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Kirrily, and then we're going to be taking a look at thunderstorms and weather events across Australia, and then finally a little peek at the tropical cyclone that could develop in the Coral Sea towards the end of the video. So make sure you stick around to the end because there is quite a lot to get through again, and there's also some good news regarding tropical low 06U, which I'll be presenting a little bit later on. As I said, make sure you are subscribed. Thank you so much for 10,000. It's a huge milestone for me, but we're not stopping here. 100k is the next mark to get to. But yeah, support is much appreciated. We're zoomed in on the northern parts of the Northern Territory in Queensland, with the remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Kirrily located about here where the cursor is, just towards the south of Mornington Island. And you can see towards the west of it, immediately towards the west, there's a big stack of thunderstorms starting to blow up, and they've been very consistent over the past 12 hours. And this has caught me rather off guard. This is actually looking a lot more like a tropical cyclone than what I was expecting initially from ex-tropical cyclone Kirrily as she formed or reformed again in the Gulf of Carpentaria. So there is a very slim chance here that she actually becomes a tropical cyclone as per the Bureau of Meteorology's analysis. I don't actually think it will get to cyclone status, considering she'll have to get 3/4 of her wind field covered with gale force winds, but right now she does actually have some gale force winds up towards the top side of the storm, especially blowing into this part of Queensland through here between locations around Burkton up towards Currumba, and that includes Burkton as well. They'll probably be receiving some gale force winds right now. And if we actually take a look at wind observations, Mornington Island as well, winds sustained of 65 kilometres an hour and gusts probably higher to around 85 kilometres an hour. You're looking here at a tropical cyclone, a Category 1 strength tropical cyclone as per maximum sustained winds. It is just not classifiable as a tropical cyclone, as I said, because of that gale rule. And if you want more information on classification, you can go to the Bureau of Meteorology's website. I think their classification system is an absolute load of horse crap. It's a very picky way to classify a tropical cyclone. They should be done on maximum wind speeds, but it is the Bureau of Meteorology at the end of the day. You can also see a couple of thunderstorms blowing in across central northern Queensland and up towards far northern Queensland, between Cairns and across to Georgetown and Croydon. They've been pretty consistent, especially about 12 hours ago, but they've slowly started to peter off, and it looks like they haven't been initialized on the rainfall run. But you can see actually on the rainfall run, the models have done a very good job at picking out where the main convection is, and it is towards the western side. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the models are very reliable today with this tropical cyclone, and I mean, so they should be. The storm is about 6 hours away from landfall. As a tropical low or a very weak Category 1 strength system, depending on what it does in the next couple of hours. And yeah, they also give a very good picture of what we're expecting over the coming couple of days. So we've had a slight westerly shift in the track, with the tropical low actually paralleling the Queensland Northern Territory border. This does shift where we're expecting the majority of the rainfall, where it's going to be over the next couple of days. We could be seeing rainfall around Canteen Creek, Kirrily Creek, and towards Gregory into Queensland, down towards Mount Isa, and then probably towards Biloela down here, and we're no longer looking at this significant rainfall extending as far over as Cloncurry or Julia Creek. It's mostly going to be concentrated about the Queensland and Northern Territory border over the coming couple of days. And if we flick to a rainfall accumulation map of the next 3 days, around the storm site right now, the initial landfall site for the tropical cyclone, anywhere immediately west of it, up to 300 millimetres can be expected over the next 3 days, and most of that will fall in the next 24 hours actually. And in fact, a very good portion of that is expected in the next 12 hours, which you can see here, up to 150 millimetres, which will be causing flash flooding in some of these locations. But if we take it back to the next 3 days, you can see quite a lot of rainfall anywhere towards the west of where this tropical low actually tracks, and there will be one or two places that pick up over 100 millimetres of rain, which in this part, especially the deeper you get into the Northern Territory and Queensland, 100 millimetres of rainfall, you're approaching half a year, even up towards 9 months worth of rainfall for some of these locations. And then as it gets towards South Australia, Birdsville, they could be seeing a significant amount of rainfall as well, up to 100 millimetres in one or two locations around Birdsville. Birdsville itself expecting up to 30 millimetres of rainfall, which is still a substantial total for the very isolated remote town, which has an average annual rainfall total of about 120 millimetres per year. A very dry community indeed. So yeah, quite a lot of rainfall is expected to fall in the Northern Territory side of where this tropical cyclone tracks through. It will be a weakening tropical low as it moves through the desert, and it'll be moving fast enough not to dump stupid amounts of rainfall over certain locations. We won't be seeing something like the brown ocean effect start to materialize off this thing. Now, it gets very close to Lake Eyre here. It doesn't actually dump any rainfall over Lake Eyre by around 5 days out, but it passes over Mumba, and as we all know, there's a lot of rivers that feed into the Lake Eyre around this sort of area north of Lake Eyre, northeast of Lake Eyre, around Mumba and Birdsville. So there's a very good chance that if 100 or 150 millimeters falls over one river, we could be seeing Lake Eyre fill from this tropical low as it makes passage into northern New South Wales, northwestern New South Wales. And there, it could move through central New South Wales as well, and then on towards Canberra and Sydney. And we could also be seeing rainfall totals, around, I'd say, 6 to 7 days' time, maybe next Wednesday or Thursday, really start to pick up for parts of northern New South Wales. We could be seeing rainfall totals from the remnants of this tropical low actually maybe not materialise at all. The earlier forecast models were actually saying for quite a substantial amount of... I've completely missed a day. Yeah, so around Tuesday next week, we could be seeing the tropical low move through the eastern parts of New South Wales. We could be seeing daily accumulations approach 30 millimetres. Once again, nothing to write home about, but there is a chance that Sydney side has received the remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Kirrily as she makes her marathon journey across eastern Australia. But again, it will be nothing more than just a little bit of blustery showers at this point. This is a very messy looking system with a lot of low pressure systems actually embedded within it, and it does not look like a fully fledged tropical low at this time. I'll just flick those wind observations off. But yeah, that is a quick look at ex-tropical cyclone Kirrily. Quite a lot of rainfall is expected, and she'll also bring temperatures quite substantially higher than average, especially on the forward side of the system. So by next Monday, there could be daytime maxima in some parts of New South Wales approach 41, 42 degrees Celsius, especially around Cobar and Dubbo. And we could also be seeing some pretty warm temperatures on the backside of the system around the Northern Territory as well. We could be seeing daytime maxima approach 46 or 47 in one or two locations. And even Sydney, maybe Sydney's western suburbs might get up towards 37 or 38 degrees Celsius. But the worrying thing is this is going to be coupled with a relatively high humidity. We could be seeing humidity values of around 50% in these locations here. And you'd be talking about a heat index, if it's going to be 38 degrees Celsius in Penrith, you'd be talking about a heat index probably approaching 43 or 44 degrees Celsius. So it's going to be a very horrible heat that they receive as this tropical low makes its passage through, and it could actually be a very hot night Monday night and into Tuesday morning with the passage of the remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Kirrily as she moves through. Now that basically sums it up for the remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Kirrily. Over the next 10 days, there's actually not too much expected nationwide. There might be one or two spots that pick up a significant amount of rainfall across the Northern Territory. Actually, I've just sighted this little spot here where the cursor is, and as we get through, I guess into next week, we might be seeing another tropical low. Yeah, I thought so. Another tropical low move through the Gulf of Carpentaria and dump a substantial amount of rainfall by next weekend over here. But again, this is a very not a weird track for a tropical cyclone to be taking across the Northern Territory, but it is the Access G3 in the long range, and that is a very kind of unnerving prospect in the sense that the Access G3 never gets anything right post sort of 5 days, or very rarely gets anything right post 5 days. So I would not be putting my money behind this system. But once again, every tropical low that the forecast model spins up, it's a very good idea to check back the next day and have a look at what it's doing, because if it's got a very similar story, then we're looking at model certainty, and that's where we're looking at the chances of this system starting to increase. But right now, this is a 0% chance of forming. But again, check back on the channel tomorrow, and if this is still here, I will be providing coverage on this system, because it is something that we will need to be putting into our forecast. Now, there's quite a lot of talk and actually quite a lot of hype in the mainstream media about a tropical cyclone that's expected to form in the Coral Sea. I'm going to take a look at this system right now, because I'm going to, spoiler alert, it's very little threat to Queensland at this point. I think the news sites that are hyping this up as the next Queensland cyclone are doing so to generate clicks and profit, because this is absolutely no threat to Queensland at this stage, and I highly doubt it will ever become a Queensland threat. But once again, a cyclone in the Coral Sea is very interesting to a lot of people, and it is going to be a threat to New Caledonia and Vanuatu. Anyways, taking a look at this tropical cyclone right now as it develops, it is likely to get to tropical cyclone status. You can see by around Sunday or so, we're looking at a storm, a very broad low pressure system with winds probably approaching 50 kilometers an hour on the southern side sustained. So you're looking at wind gusts probably of around 70 to 80 kilometers an hour approaching New Caledonia. Very strong wind gusts indeed, actually, and they could be delivering some pretty gnarly wave conditions across New Caledonia. So if you are watching from New Caledonia, first of all, hello. And second of all, if you live in an area that's prone to flooding from big seas or a storm tide, then this is a forecast that you really need to be watching. And there will be storm warnings on the New Caledonia Weather Service on their page, so make sure you are keeping up to date with them. And also for Vanuatu as well, on the northern side, they might be getting some pretty significant winds as well. And as we play this through to Tuesday, it develops cyclone winds by around Tuesday morning. And does it become a fully fledged tropical cyclone? Yes, by Wednesday morning, we've got a Category 1 strength tropical cyclone here moving through Vanuatu around Port Vila. It's a very, very, very broad system. This will be an absolute mess on satellite imagery. There'll be a thunderstorm here, a thunderstorm here, a thunderstorm here, maybe some thunderstorms back up here. This will be a very messy system. It'll be struggling to get itself together because of how broad it is, and we're not expecting this to become a powerful tropical cyclone unless something changes drastically in the next 24 hours, which is very unlikely to happen. This will look like an east coast low as it moves through Vanuatu. Still though, winds of around 90 kilometers an hour in this system, so you're looking at something approaching Category 2 status here as it moves towards New Caledonia, still strengthening, mind you, and it actually tightens itself up a little bit as it gets towards New Caledonia. We'll be seeing peak wind gusts approaching 100 kilometers an hour, or peak wind gusts rather approaching 140 to 150 kilometers an hour, so you'll be looking at a Category 2 strength tropical cyclone here coming towards New Caledonia, making that landfall on Thursday and then moving back into the Coral Sea, and I think here is where it starts to weaken off a little bit. It gets so broad, it just won't be able to keep itself together at this point. So even though it looks quite strong on this image here, I mean, it's basically 3/4 of the size of Queensland, it is very unlikely to be any significant threat, and this will likely not materialize because of how large the system is. Now, before I take a look at the long-range forecast for this tropical cyclone, we'll take a look at other forecast models and see what they've got in store. Now, this is for the Eastern Reef by around Wednesday midday. They've got a very weak tropical cyclone, once again broad and not classifiable as a tropical cyclone moving into Queensland, and then paralleling down the Queensland coastline. I don't think that this is going to happen. That's a very oddball track for a tropical cyclone to be taking. It'll be heading in a very weird direction, and I don't think the steering currents are going to allow it to move northwest in the Coral Sea. Normally the steering currents are very good at pushing tropical cyclones down towards New Zealand, and it's quite rare that you see a tropical cyclone move significantly northwest in the Coral Sea, and I don't think that this is going to be an example of it here. But still relatively powerful as it gets towards Mackay, winds of around 120 kilometers an hour. Again, I really don't think that this will be classifiable as a tropical cyclone even by next weekend. Just looking at this, it's just going to be too broad and too messy. It might get a subtropical classification, but it's going to look like and it's going to feel like an east coast low up there. So really nothing to be worrying about too much if this forecast was to materialize. The GFS has a picture similar to the Access G3 model in terms of track, but very different in terms of intensity. This means that we've got very little model congruency between the models. The forecast models are all saying completely different things in terms of track and intensity, which means there is so much uncertainty surrounding this system, and it's very difficult to give a proper forecast on. But I will summarize it right now. If you live on Vanuatu and New Caledonia, make sure you are watching this system and the forecasts very closely, because there is a chance that you get impacted by Category 1 or Category 2 strength tropical cyclone from about Tuesday onwards into about early next weekend. The scope of impact is a very, very long one. We could be seeing impact spread across the week for those locations. Significant rainfall is always a possibility with these slow-moving tropical cyclones, and also these very broad tropical cyclones. I mean, the Eastern Reef calling for up to 200, 300 millimeters on these locations here, and so is the Axis as well. I think the Axis might be a little bit more bullish with up to 800 millimeters on parts of New Caledonia, which is plausible, very plausible over the next 10 days. The Eastern Reef actually calling for that Queensland impact. I just forgot about that. The Queensland situation, well, the Queensland scenario is very unlikely, Not expecting any impacts on the Queensland coastline, but once again, we'll be watching this closely. We'll get a very good idea on what this tropical low is going to be doing by around next Thursday or so. So if you want to subscribe, make sure, next Tuesday rather. So if you want to subscribe, then make sure you click the subscribe button and also leave a like on the video while you're at it. And I'll be giving you the latest information by next Tuesday regarding this tropical cyclone, when we'll have a very good idea on where it's going and who it's going to impact. But at this stage, it's just too early to tell. I mean, if you were to take a look at the satellite imagery of it right now, it's just a little cluster of thunderstorms moving towards New Caledonia. I wouldn't even be able to pick this out as a developing tropical low. It barely has a centre of circulation, so a very disappointing looking system moving towards New Caledonia at this time. But yeah, still though, significant rainfall over Vanuatu and New Caledonia. The chance of the Queensland impact is there, but it is very remote and very low, and it's not even worth worrying about at this time. But yeah, that is a very basic look at the Australian weather so far and what's impacting certain locations. Northern Queensland and the Northern Territory stay on notice for significant flooding from the remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Kirrily as she moves through, and the flooding situation will continue to evolve for Queensland and then northern South Australia and into northern New South Wales as well, where we could be seeing the remnants of Kirrily move through and deliver a significant amount of rainfall there. And if you're watching from Vanuatu and New Caledonia as well, significant flooding is possible from the passage of tropical low 06U as she develops up into a tropical cyclone. It will likely get a name in the South Pacific, and the next name on the South Pacific naming list is Tropical Cyclone Nat. That's a name that this system is likely to get. Again, I don't think it's going to get named. And there's also a cluster of thunderstorms moving over Fiji right now, or adjacent to Fiji, and there is a chance that these storms develop into the next tropical cyclone for there as well. In the South Pacific, there could be two tropical cyclones moving through that I forgot to talk about. One of them could be very strong, moving over what looks to be, correct me if I'm wrong, not Tonga, it would be Tuvalu, I think. I'm very unfamiliar with geography in the South Pacific. I'm only decently good at it in Australia. But yeah, anyway, really starting to waffle on here, and I do apologise for that. Thank you so much for the feedback in the community poll yesterday as well. Uploads once a day, except for significant weather events where there will also be an evening upload. The feedback really is great, and there'll be more community polls on that as well. And I'm also thinking of running members-only polls too. So if you want to be a member and get access to members-only polls, then click the join button as well and select the channel sponsor button. It's a small price to pay, and it really does help out on obtaining software for these videos. And I thank you to all of the channel members. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next storm. Goodbye.